winning games isn't easy by any means, but our ultimate goal is definitely not a bowl game. So, it's good. 6 wins is good. It's a successful season to some, but, we came here for much more. We came here to win the championship.
Tempo here, a play action. Braxton taking a shot, right on the money. Touchdown, Southern Miss. Sean Chapman. Oh boy, flea flicker time. Let's try it. Downfield, Tyshawn Chapman. Touchdown, Southern Miss.
Hey, Golden Eagle fans, I'm Southern Miss Stadium announcer Jackson Walker, and you're listening to Nasty Bunch and Beyond.
How's it going, y'all? Welcome into another episode of Nasty Bunch and Beyond. I'm your host, Dalton Trigg. I am joined by my co-host, Drew Johnson. You can find both of us on X at Dalton_Trigg and at Coach Drew33. You can also find the pod account at Nasty Bunch Pod as well on X/Twitter, whatever you want to call it. Today's episode, DJ, is brought to you by To The Top merch. For all of you watching, you can visit tothetopmerch.myshopify.com and use the promo code NastyBunchPod for 20% off your order. And I'm sure, a lot of people listening, if you're listening to this, you're probably familiar with it. You've probably seen them on Instagram or Facebook or whatever. But To The Top merch has some great stuff. Our friends over there, look, I just have some examples here that I'm going to show people. This is one. This is a classic, classic vintage stuff. It's got To The Top on the back here. If you're not watching the video and you're just listening to this, you have no idea what I'm talking about. But you can go to you can go to our Substack and see these hats that I'm showing. But that one's the black with the gold, the old gold, lettering and bill, and then we got this one right here. Very nice, light color
style.
Oh yeah, it has the TTT on the side.
That's badass. That's cool.
You got this like corduroy material, which is real nice. Also has the TTT on the side. University of Southern Mississippi, and then this one was really cool in my opinion. You got really cool. You got the guy that's on my back wall here. On the side of, where the M is at there. And then you got baseball, you got basketball, another baseball there on the back. And then let's see here, softball, and then another football on the side. So, just all Southern Miss sports in one hat in this one here. But like I said, great stuff. I am a sucker, DJ, for anything Southern Miss vintage, whether it's hats, jerseys, shirts, whatever it is, I'm a sucker for all that stuff. So, again, visit tothetopmerch.myshopify.com and use our promo code NastyBunchPod, and you'll get 20% off your entire order. Definitely go do that if you want some nice USM merch. So, DJ, we have, unfortunately, a pretty big loss to talk about. We came into the weekend with a chance to wrap up the West Division before we even got to that Troy game at the end of the year. But, to do that, had to beat Texas State at home and then had to beat South Alabama this coming weekend in Mobile. And look, I think a lot of people, including myself, I was shocked at how bad we lost this game. The final score, Texas State just came into the rock, and it wasn't even close. It was 41-14 was the final score. Mm-hmm. It was bad, really bad. There's no sugarcoating it. It was the worst game of the season for the Golden Eagles. And look, given, Braylon Braxton was out. He's dealing with I think a knee sprain, MCL sprain, I think is technically what it is. And look, Coach Huff said that he probably could have given it a go because he said he wasn't a doctor, but he was guessing that Braxton is probably around 75-80%. And, it's one of those things where it's like, do you really want to play? Because, I mean, you control your own destiny whether you win this game or not. I know some people were mad because they said, well, you're also playing for an outside shot at the college football playoff. You were bigger on that aspect of it than I was last week. Even if we won out, there was a chance, but I don't think they were ever going to put us into the college football playoff over whoever wins the American Conference. So, but I mean, look, it's something that had to be considered. It's like, do you play Braxton, who's only 75, 80%, risk him getting hurt again, which would be another setback? And then next thing you know, you find yourself, say you lose anyway against Texas State, because with how the team played overall, that's highly likely a possibility. Say you play Braxton, you lose anyway, he gets injured again. Next thing you know, you find yourself playing Troy in the last game of the season with Braxton not 100%, and then you end up, ending the season with a 3-game losing streak, and you don't even make the conference championship. That's what I'm looking at, and like, well, it was really bad that we lost that game, especially with how we lost that game to Texas State. But I don't think Braxton playing was going to make that big of a difference. And Liddy wasn't even, he had a couple of throws where he forced it. It was really kind of later in the game when it was like do or die. You have to make a play. So he kind of forced it and ended up with 2 interceptions for the game. But, he played decent for the hand he was dealt, completed 29 of 44 passes for 267 yards. 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. I just don't think it would have made a difference if Braxton played. And I can't fault Coach Huff for, taking the cautious approach with him, because the only way we have a real shot of winning a conference championship is if Braylon Braxton is 100%. And he was not going to be 100% if he played in that game this past weekend, after he wasn't able to go 100% in practice last week. So I'm okay with it.
Yeah, also you have to consider the risk of injuring him further. A sprained MCL, you could further injure the MCL, but I've seen people play that have that kind of injury that go on to have, and they play with it or practice with it full contact, and they go on to have even worse injuries later on, like a torn ACL, which, knocks him out not only for this year, but potentially, a year into his professional career. So that would be incredibly detrimental for not only us, but his draft stock. And we always want to make sure that we're doing right by the kids. I think Coach Huff did the right thing. I know it's a bitter pill to swallow for all of us, but we're still in play for the conference championship. That's the goal. No mistake about it. And, I think it's still well within reason for us to be able to do it. But like you said, we don't do it without Braylon Braxton. No question.
Yeah. That's just how it is. You gotta have your top guy fully healthy, especially if you're going to, beat James Madison. And look, James Madison is a juggernaut, at least by Sun Belt standards. But I also think, I was looking at some of the stuff, and like, I think we kind of overlooked, which I didn't. I knew I thought their defense was going to play much worse than what they did Saturday, but their offense is elite. Like, they came into that game with a 3-6 record, but that's a better football team than 3-6. They've had and we talked about it on the previous pods, they've had several games this year that have gone into overtime, 1-score losses in overtime, double overtime, high scoring shootouts with Marshall and, Arkansas State and, a couple other ones. It's a better football team than what their record has shown. A lot of people picked them to win Sun Belt before the season started because, they're about to go to the Pac-12. This is a much better football team than the record shows. And, they're second in offense in the Sun Belt, only to James Madison, which, tells you how much firepower they have. So, let's see. Now, defensively, they were only 12th. They're only 12th out of 14 Sun Belt team. So that's where I was kind of, I thought even with Liddy starting, and again, he had decent stats despite the 2 picks. I thought that Texas State's defense was bad enough to where it would have been a shootout. And even if you lose, maybe it's a close loss. But I wasn't expecting Texas State's defense to hold us to 14 points. That was a shocker to me. But again, I just want to point out that although it's bad, I mean, people will look at this on paper and it's like, man, we shouldn't have lost that. And that's correct. Should not have lost this game. But again, I think Texas State's a little bit better than what that record shows. It would have been a much different story, losing to Louisiana Monroe, for example, instead of Texas State. So with that being said, I saw a lot of talk about this online after the game. A lot of people like to talk about Southern Miss having a to the top moment. And, what that means, it's like no matter how good things are going, there's always going to be something that comes up that just, it's like a record scratch, like halts the momentum. I don't want to say choke, but, there's always something that happens that halts all that momentum. And so everybody's calling Saturday's game a to the top moment. And that, look, we had one of those during that 2011 season. The team finished that year 12-2, nationally ranked, beat number 6 Houston at number 6 Houston for the conference championship. And, toward the end of that regular season, they lost a game to UAB, just a game that they had no business losing, and it just happened, so, and that's just one example. It kind of goes across all sports, honestly.
It does.
That was something. It was lighthearted. I mean, people say funny stuff like that just to kind of cope with the loss, but I did think that was pretty funny. I saw Chris Jones, linebacker Chris Jones. He made a comment saying that, he kind of knew something was wrong before the game even started. Like he said, the vibes were off going into that Texas State game. So, yeah, I kind of thought the same thing. Like before kickoff, I just had this feeling like, I don't know, it's just there's something in the air. Maybe it was because, Braxton supposedly wasn't playing, but I was looking down there and I saw him warming up, even though he had that big brace on his knee. But I don't know. I kind of got that feeling too. But look, there were too many penalties, too many turnovers. The defense didn't really seem prepared. And a part of that, I mean, I get it. A part of that's on us. But another thing is you got to tip your hat to Texas State too, especially their offensive line. Their offensive line just completely dominated the entire game. I mean, Lincoln Pear and Greg Burrell's at number 7, number 9, they couldn't be stopped on the ground. They combined, just those two running backs combined for 213 rushing yards. Texas State as a team had 257 rushing yards.
Jesus.
It was a massacre. I mean, it was, every time those two got the ball, it was between 5 to 8 yards a carry. And that doesn't set you up for success. Their quarterback had absolutely no pressure on him whatsoever because he didn't hardly have to throw. What was his name? Oh yeah, Brad Jackson is Texas State's quarterback. He was efficient. He was 14 of 17, but look, he only threw 17 times, and Liddy threw 44 times in this game. So that tells you, what was working for each team there. Texas State was running the ball so well they didn't hardly have to pass. And then, Brad Jackson, he was pretty good on the ground too. He had 49 rushing yards for 2 touchdowns. There were a couple of plays where it's just like anytime we almost got a hand on Jackson, he turned into prime Johnny Manziel, it felt like. and just ran the width of the field and just outran us to the pylon. So, it was something that I didn't expect. It was very disheartening. But again, you got to tip your hat to Texas State too. And Coach Huff said it is probably the cleanest game that Texas State has played all year. This playing like they did Saturday. That's the team that, a lot of people thought would contend for a Sun Belt title this year, and it just didn't materialize. But I just hate that it had to happen in this moment at the end of the season against us. So it was unfortunate, but I mean, I just, I think it's one of those things that you have to take with a grain of salt. You have to flush it, so to speak. You can't just dwell on it going into Mobile against South Alabama next week. But I mean, overall, what do you think about the defensive performance?
Again, I kind of echo Chris Jones's sentiment. It just seemed like something was off from the get-go. And I will say, whenever you're dealing with a quarterback with wheels, it's so much harder to defend. It is so much harder to bottle him up and still be able to effectively, defend in the secondary. I mean, you're literally asking, and you can't. I mean, you literally are asking these guys in the secondary to do 2 to 3 jobs at once. And that can be a lot. And whenever your boys up front can't get to him because they can't catch him because he's outside the pocket already, it's just tough. So we should have made some adjustments. But again, you get the feeling that things are off right off the bat because obviously your leader isn't there to lead you into battle. And yes, it impacts the defense. He leads them all. Braxton leads them all. So I'm with you on the fact that we need to just flush this and move on. You also have to take into account that teams that have absolutely nothing to lose, like Texas State, are going to be better. They just are. They're dangerous. And it's because the only thing they have to play for is to mess you up.
Well, I will add, they did have something to play. They had one thing to play for. If they had lost that game, it would have knocked them out of having any chance of making a bowl game. Because if you lose 7 games, you're done. You're not going to a bowl game. Well, I say that. I guess there are a few exceptions, because I'm pretty sure when we played Rice a few years ago in that Lending Tree Bowl, I'm pretty sure Rice had a 5-7 record going into that one, if I'm not mistaken. Am I remembering that correct? I'll have to look that up. But anyway, basically, if you lose, most times if you lose 7 games, you're not making it to a bowl game. So, they were playing essentially with what's left of their season on the line. And, a lot of people counting them out. They had the couple of starters that were suspended from the brawl against Louisiana last week. You're right. I mean, a team that with not much to lose and, just trying to salvage what little bit they can from this year, that's a dangerous team to play. And look, Coach Huff said it, and we've said it too. I mean, we've been playing with fire for a few weeks now. Almost blew that game against Arkansas State. Got a big interception in the end zone to seal it at the very end. But, up 13 points with under 5 minutes remaining in that game. And, to only be up 6, and then the other team has it on the 13-yard line with a chance to win it. You got, I don't want to say you got lucky, but you forced yourself into a situation where you had to make a game-winning play when the game should have been over well before you got to that point. The games you played against, Louisiana, and let me see. Let me look at the actual schedule here just to let's see here. there's been a couple games this year, and the giving up the rushing yards has been something that's been a problem in a handful of games. Like I remember even against Jackson State, second game of the season, gave up nearly 200 rushing yards to Jackson State. So, that's not good. But yeah, I'm looking at the schedule here. So obviously the Texas State game was horrible. Scraped by at Arkansas State with the 27-21 win. Louisiana Monroe was an easy win. But you remember, until they muffed that punt in the third quarter, that was a close game too.
Mm-hmm.
Homecoming against Louisiana Monroe. Got by 22-10 at Louisiana. We were up big at Georgia Southern, up 28-7, I believe. And then barely squeaked by at the end of that one, 38-35, because we gave up a big second half to Georgia Southern. So, Coach Huff mentioned this in his postgame presser. We've been playing with fire for a while. We've been making mistakes, and the defense has masked a lot of those mistakes by getting a bunch of turnovers. Well, those turnovers didn't come against Texas State.
Mm-hmm.
And the way Coach Huff put it, I liked his, analogy. He said it's kind of like, a kid touching a hot stove. You can tell the kid as much as you want, like, hey, don't touch it. You're going to burn your hand if you touch it. But then they finally touch it and it hits like, oh, okay. Okay, well, I just burned myself. I'm not going to do that again. So
no, sometimes it's the only way you really improve is by making mistakes and then building off of those mistakes, building off of what you learn. The mistake would be to not learn anything from this. And I promise you, Coach Huff's going to make sure they've learned something from this, either the easy way or the hard way. All I know is I would not want to be in that film room if I was them, and I would not want to be on that practice field if I was them, because it's going to be rough this week. But I guarantee you they'll be ready to play.
Yeah, I agree with that, because I was listening to that post-game press conference, and it was about if those of you who are listening, if you find that full presser on YouTube, you go to about the 5-minute mark, and I forgot who it was that asked the question, but she basically asked him about, what are basically his thoughts on how this game went and everything. And that's when he went into saying, like, hey, he said, it's on me. He took full responsibility for it. Said he, obviously he didn't have his guys prepared. The way he answered that question, he goes on for a couple minutes after she asked that question, but the way he answered that question, just from like past experience with football coaches I've had, I was just smiling listening to Coach Huff, because I was like, okay, they're about to have hell in practice this week.
Mm-hmm.
is what that meant. That was coach talk for, yeah, he took responsibility. He's like, yeah, this is my fault. I didn't have them ready. What that says is I'm going to have them ready next week.
Mm-hmm. If it's my fault, I'm going to make sure I take care of it.
That's right.
That's what I got out of it.
So, look, but that helps, it's what we talked about last week, and it's, goes through any sport. You can go basketball, football, baseball, whatever. It's like we talked about the old Coach Lofton saying that I brought up on the last pod about perfect practice makes perfect. It's not just practice makes perfect. So, Coach Huff, I'm sure he is he's hammering that in this week. So, couple things I specifically saw. I mentioned that the defensive line struggled in this game. Texas State's offensive line was pretty much perfect. I mean, I don't even know if they had a single holding call in that game, which is crazy to think.
A little weird, but okay.
Yeah, a little weird, because I saw a little bit of holding going on there that wasn't called. But anyway, specifically, like some of these, they were running some counter plays and like some trap plays. They had on those counter plays, they had like the guard and the tackle pulling.
Wow.
And on a few of those, if I remember right, I'm pretty sure they had the guard and the tackle pulling. We were caught off guard by that every single time. Like, everybody was just out of position, and they broke some really big runs off of that stuff. So Coach Huff said they weren't really shocked by anything that they did, that Texas State did offensively. But whatever the case was, the guys just weren't really, they just didn't seem prepared. Whether the coaches laid it out for them or not, and I'm sure they did, it just didn't sink in, I guess. So, it's, again, this game was lost in the trenches. This wasn't I don't think this was a skill player thing. The secondary, the secondary could have played better, but, when a quarterback has when he's back in the pocket for 10 seconds, it seems like, those guys can only keep receivers covered for so long. I mean, you got 8 to 10 seconds and you're not getting any pressure on the quarterback. Somebody's going to get open. So that's why I said this game was lost in the trenches.
Another issue is if you do give them that much time and say you do a good job covering, your receivers, eventually that guy's just going to take off. And that's what I was mentioning earlier. That's why it's so difficult to deal with a guy who can do both, who is a dual threat. Even the best defenses of all time have had issues with quarterbacks like that. Go back to the old Saban Alabama teams back when Johnny Manziel was at Texas A&M. Manziel would eat them alive, and those are some of the best defenses I've ever seen. So they're just hard to deal with. You got to get some pressure on the quarterback, plain and simple.
Yeah. And look, this is off topic here, but can we please get some pylon cameras?
Yeah.
Can we please get some pylon camera? Because, and again, I'm not blaming this. I mean, I think this is more, the loss is more on what we didn't do right than what Texas State did right, in my opinion, even though their offensive line did have a great game and their running backs did. But there were some calls that I just did not agree with. DJ, I'll get to the pylon thing, but like, just for example, on the first drive of the game for Texas State, they get down to around the 35 or 30-yard line. It looks like we got a sack fumble, and, we're running it back all the way. Well, they review the call, and they say that it was an incomplete pass. It wasn't a fumble, which is fine. But during the run back on the fumble, one of the assistant coaches on the team got a flag for being on the field or something. Okay, First thing, I thought they gave a warning before they gave a flag on something like that. I thought you got one warning before they throw the flag. That was my first issue with that particular call. 2, even if they're not going to do a warning and they're going to give a flag, why? And I'm sure this is the rule, but if they're erasing the fumble return, if they're erasing that from it ever happening and the play ended when the ball hit the ground, the incomplete pass, if that's the case, why should the penalty that happened during the fumble return run back, why should that penalty still count? That makes absolutely no sense to me.
It shouldn't. It
makes no sense to me. You're wiping out the play that just happened, so why does the penalty still count? So, not only would that have been a 4th down and forced like a 50-plus yard field goal, which, I mean, Texas State we still held them to a field goal, so it was 3-0, but it would have been a longer field goal attempt, and it probably would have made them think about even punting because their kicker isn't the best. Their kicker is the reason why they've lost a couple of these close games that they've lost this season. So I was very frustrated by that. It was one of those things that happened at the very beginning of the game, and you just started thinking, man, this is going to be one of those days, isn't it? And then the pylon camera thing, Texas State's quarterback, it was a 3rd and goal. He reached out. It looked like his knee hit the ground at least a half yard before the ball crossed the plane. At least from, obviously we don't have a straight down the line view of it, but they didn't even review it. They didn't even review it. That's why I said, like, can we please like invest in some pylon cameras or have the Sun Belt invest in the pylon camera? Because like some of these angles are just not there for officials to review. And I'm guessing that's why it wasn't reviewed, because there was no good way to look and see if it needed to be overturned or not. But yeah, that was a couple of my gripes from this one.
You would think that something like pylon cameras would be standard for a conference, though.
You would think, unless the budget is just so low, we don't know what we're talking about.
Isn't that expensive? Pylon cams are not that in the grand scheme of things. Pylon cams are not that expensive. So,
if they will allow it, I will go purchase some pylon cameras myself and present them to the university.
On one condition. On every replay, you see custom-built trailers down there at the corner.
That's right. The custom-built trailers of Mississippi pylon camera review. That's right. That's what we need to do.
Yeah, man.
We will pay for this pylon camera setup. You know, if every time you go to review it, we have our little logo in the bottom corner there, that'd be nice. But yeah, I mean, look, this is one of those, like you said, I'm not making excuses, but I'm saying it was a bad game. Everybody knows it was a bad game. It was disappointing. It was probably the largest crowd aside from maybe the Jackson State. There were a ton of people at that Jackson State game. It was probably the largest crowd this season, honestly. And I just hate that it ended like that, because there are people who they're not. I mean, you'd love for them to come to every game, but the people who the team's trying to win back, the ones who have been scorned over the last several years, really the last decade. Mm-hmm. And I can just imagine people who drove a good bit, a good long ways to get there, and then that's the kind of game they took in. I hate that, because now they're going to have it in their minds that, nothing's changed. And it has changed. I'm not making excuses. It was a bad game. I hate that people had to come out for that game specifically. But perspective is everything. And at the end of the day, we're 7-3 overall. We're 5-1 in conference play. And we're still in control of our own destiny for a Sun Belt Championship game appearance. So, that's a far cry from being 1-11 or 3-9 like the season before last. I know people were like, oh yeah, but think about, I had somebody tell me, but think about how big yesterday's loss was, or the weekend loss was, from the lens of, oh, we had a shot at the college football playoff. Again, I don't think we had a real shot at it. Unless North Texas stumbles somewhere in these last few weeks, North Texas is going to get in.
It was either going to be North Texas or Memphis, I think.
Right, like even James Madison has a better shot than we would have of making it. But even if it's James Madison or North Texas, I think North Texas gets in.
Yeah.
So,
I think so too.
So, all right. So we're going to end on this. The South Alabama game now essentially doesn't mean anything, from a win-loss perspective, unless Troy loses to Georgia State at home, and Georgia State's terrible. But then again, Georgia State only lost to James Madison 14-7 earlier this season. So
anybody can beat anybody. So I'm not throwing anything out. I mean,
yeah,
we're victims of that. So
with that being said, though, you got to have an upset happen to know if, how important this South Alabama game could be. But it's one of those things where we play South Alabama at 2:30. The Troy-Georgia State game doesn't start until 3, so 30 minutes later. Mm-hmm. What do you do? I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, do you play all of your guys normal minutes? And, if Braylon Braxton, which he should be back, he should, having 2 full weeks, he should be close to 100%. But if he's not, Do you want to risk that again? Or do you want to have him have another full week and get ready for a winner-take-all game against Troy at the Rock the following week? Or do you go all out and then by some chance, if Georgia State does upset Troy, then, you can potentially clinch now?
So I think it all depends on what the athletic training staff says about Braxton's knee. If they say he's 100% and ready to go, anything above 90, I think I play him because you want him to get game reps before you get into meaningful football against Troy. I get that South Alabama doesn't matter, but it still kind of does because you don't want to get off rhythm. And football is huge on rhythm. So if you don't play your starters, or at least start your starters, and then just pull them whenever you get up 30 points, you kind of risk throwing them off rhythm, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you don't want to go into a winner-take-all game, a potential winner-take-all game on a 2-game losing streak. I mean,
that'd be bad.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want that to happen. Now, look, South Alabama, they're not very good. They're 3-7 this year, but they have a pretty decent defense.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I think you just kind of play it by ear. I'm with you. If Braxton is 100% and your other guys who might be a little banged up, I think you just play your guys. You see how the first quarter goes. By the time you get to the second quarter, maybe you can have one of your assistant coaches or one of the interns or, have somebody on score watching duty. Mm-hmm. And, if as the game goes on, if it looks like an upset might actually happen, then, maybe you pull your guys a little early. But, again, I didn't think Landry Liddy played that bad. I mean, I thought he played decent. This past weekend. So even if Braxton doesn't play, if the team around him, the defense specifically is what I'm looking for this weekend. They should have a fire lit under them.
Yes.
This weekend, especially the run defense. So if they come out and take care of business, I think you can sit Braxton and get away with this one. You can get a W in Mobile. Whether no matter what Troy ends up doing, I think you can get away with that. So that's what I would probably do. I'd go with Liddy one more time, just make absolute sure. If Troy stumbles, so be it. If they don't, you're gonna have to beat them anyway. So
yeah,
you'll have either way. You'll have Braxton at full strength or close to full strength if you take that route. So. That's just my thoughts on it. I know some people will be like, suck it up, put him in there. I don't know, man. I'm looking ahead, and if we do wrap this thing up and make it to the Sun Belt Championship game, you got to have Braxton at 100%. Because, I mean, he can throw the ball, but you need his legs at 100%, his mobility as well to give you the best chance of beating James Madison. So that's where I'm at. Well, look, guys, that's going to do it for another episode. We greatly appreciate all the support we've received early on in the life of this pod. That has only been maybe a couple months now, if that. It's been great. We're having a lot of fun. Going to continue to have a lot of fun. We have some stuff tentatively set up for later this week. I'm not going to, show our hand on that just yet. We want it to actually happen first, but, we have some good content coming up for y'all in the near future. And
really cool stuff.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And basketball team, obviously we got the football game in Mobile this coming weekend, but the basketball team, the men's basketball team, they play William Carey Tuesday night at 7:30. Before that, the women's team, the Fighting Builderbacks, take on Southeastern at Reed Green as well at 5:00. So it's a double header. You can go see the undefeated women's team play at 5, and then right after that, the men will play William Carey. And then the women play Saturday at Nichols Oh, no, at home. They play Nichols at home. So another home game at Reed Green for the women's team. And then the men, they're traveling to the Pensacola Invitational. So Saturday, they'll take on North Florida. And then on Sunday, they'll take on either UT Martin or Prairie View A&M. So a good bit of basketball going on this week. But guys, we appreciate it. Y'all have a great rest of your day. Have a great rest of your week. And if everything goes according to plan, we will be back on here probably Thursday evening or either Friday morning with another special episode of Nasty Bunch and Beyond. So, guys, appreciate it. Y'all have a great rest of your day. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.